Jake walked carefully through the rocky canyon, his boots crunching against the strange blue-colored dust that covered the alien planet. The sky above was dark purple, and two bright moons cast an eerie glow over the landscape. His oxygen mask hummed softly as he breathed, and his wrist scanner beeped, searching for valuable minerals. He had traveled far from his ship, deeper into this unknown terrain, hoping to find something worth the long journey. As he moved forward, he spotted something unusual, a large cave entrance hidden between two massive stone pillars. The rocks surrounding it were covered in strange symbols, glowing faintly in the dim light. Jake hesitated for a moment, gripping his blaster tightly. He had seen many strange things in space, but something about this cave felt different. Curiosity won over caution, and he stepped inside. The air inside was cooler, and the walls pulsed with a soft, bluish light. His footsteps echoed as he walked deeper, his eyes scanning the mysterious carvings on the walls. They didn't look like any language he had seen before. The silence inside was thick, making his heart pound a little faster. Then, in the distance, he saw something that made him stop. A figure lay motionless on the ground, half covered in shimmering dust. It was a girl, but not human. Her skin was a smooth shade of deep blue, almost like polished stone, and her long silver hair spread around her like a glowing halo. She wore a tight, futuristic suit made of a material Jake had never seen before, with faint patterns of light running across it. Her face looked peaceful, but something was wrong. Jake took a cautious step forward, scanning her with his wrist device. The readings were strange. She wasn't dead, but she wasn't fully alive either. Her body temperature was dropping, and her heart rate was slowing down. She needed help. "Hey, can you hear me?" Jake knelt beside her, reaching out a hand. As soon as he touched her shoulder, her eyes snapped open. They were silver, shining like liquid metal, and filled with panic. She gasped, her fingers clawing at the ground as if trying to hold on to something. No, it's happening," she whispered, her voice trembling. Before Jake could ask what she meant, her body began to change. A thin layer of stone spread rapidly from her fingertips, creeping up her arms like a fast-moving infection. She gasped again, her eyes pleading, but her voice was gone. The stone moved up her neck, across her face, freezing her in place. Within seconds, she was completely still, a statue of solid rock. Jake stumbled backward, his breathing quick and shallow. He had seen strange creatures, powerful aliens, and dangerous planets, but nothing like this. He stood there, staring at the stone figure that had been a living girl just moments ago. His mind raced with questions. What just happened? Who was she? And most importantly, could she be saved? A sudden noise made him spin around. A deep, low voice echoed through the cave, though there was no one in sight. "Save her, before time runs out." Jake's pulse pounded in his ears. The voice was not human. It came from the cave itself, from the glowing symbols that now flickered with urgency. His wrist scanner beeped wildly, displaying a countdown. 7 hours remaining. Jake clenched his fists, staring at the frozen girl before him. He didn't know who she was or why this had happened, but one thing was clear. He had 7 hours to find a way to save her, or she would be lost forever. Jake took a deep breath, trying to calm the racing thoughts in his head. The cave felt colder now, the glowing symbols on the walls flickering like fading stars. His wrist scanner kept beeping, the countdown ticking away -6 hours, 59 minutes left. He didn't know what would happen when the timer reached 0, but the way the voice had spoken made it clear. This was a race against time. He turned back to the frozen girl, her stone form completely still, her silver eyes now lifeless. There was no sign of movement, no warmth, only cold, solid rock. He had seen statues before, but this was different. This wasn't carved by an artist. This was real flesh and blood turned to stone. His fingers hovered over the rocky surface of her arm. Was she still alive in there? Could she hear him? Feel anything? Jake gritted his teeth, Standing around wouldn't get him answers. He needed information, and fast. He tapped his wrist device, opening a direct link to his ship's AI. Nova. Nova, scan the data I just uploaded and cross-reference with all known alien species, he said, his voice tight with urgency. A soft, feminine voice replied almost instantly. Processing. Searching. Identified. Species, Zephyrian. A rare humanoid race with advanced biological adaptation abilities. Origin. Unknown. Jake frowned. What do you mean adaptation abilities? Zephyrians have the ability to survive extreme conditions by entering a temporary petrification state, Nova explained. This transformation can be triggered by intense fear, injury, or environmental threats. Jake's stomach tightened. Intense fear. Whatever had happened to her, it had terrified her enough to turn her into stone. How do I reverse it? He asked quickly. There was a long pause. Then Nova's voice came back, slower this time. Unknown. Zephyrian data is limited. However, there is one recorded case of reversal. Petrification is not permanent if treated within a specific time frame. Jake's eyes flicked to the countdown on his scanner. 6 hours, 42 minutes. It had to be the time frame. If he didn't fix this before time ran out, she would never wake up again. He glanced around the cave. The glowing symbols had to mean something. Maybe they were instructions. A clue. He needed to figure them out before it was too late. Stepping closer to the nearest set of carvings, he reached out a hand. The moment his fingers brushed against the stone, the symbols flashed brightly, and a low humming sound filled the cave. Then, a deep voice whispered again, sending a chill down his spine. The cure is within the heart. But beware. Jake's blood ran cold. What did that mean? Whose heart? And why did it sound like a warning? You said. Jake's mind raced as the eerie voice faded into the shadows of the cave. The words echoed in his head. The cure is within the heart. But beware. What did it mean? Was it a riddle? A warning? He clenched his fists, staring at the stone girl before him. The countdown on his wrist device had dropped to 6 hours, 30 minutes. Time was slipping away. He turned back to the glowing symbols on the cave wall, running his fingers over them carefully. The carvings were ancient, older than anything he had ever seen before. Some of them looked like Zephyrian figures, with long, elegant bodies and glowing eyes. Others showed strange rituals, one figure placing a crystal into another's chest, a burst of light surrounding them. Jake's breath caught. Could this be the answer? Was the heart mentioned in the voice actually a crystal? His scanner beeped. The readings showed a faint energy source deeper inside the cave. If there was something powerful enough to reverse the petrification, it had to be there. He took one last look at the frozen girl. Hold on. I'll find a way to bring you back. With determination burning in his chest, he followed the energy signal. The deeper he went, the stronger the pulsing hum in the walls became. The glowing symbols flickered like they were guiding him. Soon, the narrow tunnel opened into a massive underground chamber. Jake's eyes widened. In the center of the chamber stood an ancient pedestal, and on it rested a floating crystal heart. It pulsed with a deep blue light, almost like it was alive. The energy surrounding it was overwhelming. His scanner readings were off the charts. He took a cautious step forward. This had to be the cure. If the Zephyrians had used it before, then maybe it could work again. But as soon as he reached for the crystal, the ground shook violently. A loud, inhuman growl echoed through the chamber. The shadows along the walls moved. And then, from the darkness, something huge began to rise. Jake's heart pounded. He wasn't alone. The warning in the cave had been real. And now, he was in danger. A monstrous shape emerged from the shadows, its glowing red eyes locking onto Jake like a predator spotting its prey. The creature was massive, at least 10 feet tall, with jagged, obsidian-like skin that pulsed with a dark energy. Long, clawed fingers curled as it took a step forward, its heavy footfalls making the ground tremble. Jake's instincts screamed at him to run, but he forced himself to stand his ground. The crystal heart floated just a few feet away, pulsing with a steady rhythm, as if it were alive. He knew that if he turned his back now, he might not get another chance. The beast growled low and deep, its voice like grinding stone. Then, to Jake's shock, it spoke. "You dare take the heart." The words rumbled through the cave like thunder. "Only one life can be saved." Jake's stomach twisted. Only one. He glanced at the frozen alien girl, still trapped in stone. If this thing was telling the truth, did that mean taking the crystal would cost someone else their life? "No," he muttered under his breath. "There has to be another way." The creature took another step forward, its massive claws scraping against the stone floor. "There is no other way. Choose." Jake's mind raced. He could fight, try to grab the crystal and escape, but the beast looked like it could tear him apart in seconds. And even if he got out alive, what if the warning was true? What if using the heart meant someone else would die? His eyes flicked between the crystal and the monster blocking his path. The countdown on his wrist device ticked lower -6 hours, 12 minutes. Time was running out, and now he wasn't just racing against the clock. He was facing a choice that could change everything. Was he willing to risk it all to save her? "You said." Jake's heart pounded as the massive creature took another step forward, its red eyes burning like molten lava. The air around it shimmered with energy, making the cave feel heavier, like the weight of an unseen force was pressing down on him. The crystal heart floated just a few feet away, pulsing with power. He could almost hear it, like a faint heartbeat calling to him. But the beast's words echoed in his mind. Only one life can be saved. Jake clenched his fists. He didn't believe in fate. He had survived impossible situations before, not because of luck, but because he never gave up. There had to be a way to take the crystal and save Kyra without sacrificing someone else. He just had to figure it out before it was too late. The creature growled, sensing his hesitation. "Time is running out. Human. Choose." Jake's eyes darted around the chamber, searching for an advantage. His wrist scanner beeped again, analyzing the symbols on the walls. The data scrolled fast across a screen. Something about Zephyrian energy transfer, balance, and sacrifice. His mind pieced it together. The crystal wasn't just a cure. It was a power source, designed to exchange life energy. That meant it didn't have to take a life. It only needed enough energy to restore Kyra. Jake exhaled sharply. That was it. He had to offer his own energy. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward. "I choose to save her," he said firmly. "And I'll pay the price myself." The creature narrowed its glowing eyes. For a moment, there was silence. Then the beast laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound, like an earthquake shaking the cavern walls. Brave, but foolish. Without warning, the creature lunged. Jake dove to the side just in time, rolling across the stone floor as the beast's massive claws slashed through the air where he had stood. Dust and debris rained down as the impact shook the cave. Jake scrambled to his feet. He had no time to hesitate. The crystal was his only chance. With every muscle tensed, he sprinted toward the pedestal. The beast roared and charged after him, its heavy steps shaking the ground. Just as its claws reached for him, Jake leaped, stretching his hand toward the floating crystal. His fingers touched it, and everything exploded in a blinding flash of blue light. "You said." A powerful shockwave burst from the crystal heart the moment Jake's fingers made contact. The entire cave trembled as a blinding blue light engulfed everything, forcing Jake to shut his eyes against the burning brightness. The air crackled with raw energy, and a deep hum vibrated through his bones. Then, silence. Jake opened his eyes, his breath sharp and uneven. The massive creature was frozen in place, its red eyes now lifeless. Dark cracks spread across its obsidian-like body, glowing with the same blue light from the crystal. It let out a deep, rumbling growl, but its voice was weaker now, fading. "The price has been paid," the creature whispered. A final crack split through its chest, and then, with a deafening shatter, the beast crumbled into a cloud of black dust. The darkness that once filled the chamber vanished, leaving only the glowing crystal heart in Jake's hands. But something was wrong. His arms felt heavy. His heartbeat slowed. A sudden weakness washed over him, making his knees buckle. He gasped, barely catching himself as he collapsed to the ground. His vision blurred, and his wrist scanner flickered with a warning. "Life energy transfer in puro juries." Jake gritted his teeth. He had guessed this would happen. The crystal needed energy to restore Aktyra, and it had taken it from him. Through his fading vision, he saw the cave around him changing. The symbols on the walls burned brighter. The energy from the crystal pulsed outward, traveling back through the tunnels, back to where Aktyra was. Jake forced himself to stay awake. It's working. It has to work. With the last of his strength, he turned his head toward the cave entrance. In the distance, barely visible through the swirling blue light, he saw her. Aktyra. The stone encasing her body cracked. Her silver eyes flickered open. "You said." A deep crackling sound echoed through the cave as the stone covering Aktyra's body split apart, thin fractures spreading across her frozen skin. Pieces of the hardened shell crumbled away, turning to dust as they hit the ground. Her silver eyes blinked, unfocused at first, then widening as she took her first breath in what felt like an eternity. Jake barely had the strength to lift his head, his vision swimming. His whole body felt like it was draining away, like he was sinking into darkness. The crystal heart in his hand flickered weakly now, its energy almost spent. Aktyra gasped, stumbling forward as the last remnants of stone dissolved from her body. She fell to her knees, her hands gripping the cold ground as she struggled to understand what had happened. Then her gaze locked onto Jake, pale, barely moving, his breath shallow. "No." Her voice was barely above a whisper, but the raw emotion in it was undeniable. She crawled toward him, her fingers trembling as she touched his face. His skin was cold. The moment she made contact, her body reacted instinctively. Glowing blue energy flared to life in her fingertips. Jake's chest rose sharply as a wave of warmth surged through him. His heartbeat, which had been slowing dangerously, stabilized. His breathing deepened, and the weakness that had been dragging him into unconsciousness began to fade. Aktyra pressed a hand over his heart, focusing. "Stay with me." The energy flowing from her body was different from the crystal's power. It was natural, Zephyrian life energy. And it was healing him. Jake's eyes fluttered open, dazed. He blinked up at her, confused at first, then slowly understanding. A weak smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. So, it worked. Aktyra let out a shaky laugh, tears glistening in her silver eyes. "Yes, you stubborn human. It worked." Jake exhaled, feeling warmth return to his limbs. He stared at her, relieved, but also curious. She was alive, free from stone. But there was something else. A connection between them now, something deeper than words. The cave around them had grown silent. The danger gone. The crystal heart, now dim, lay forgotten on the floor. Whatever power it once held was used up. Aktyra helped Jake sit up, her expression still full of unspoken emotions. "You risked everything for me," she whispered. "Why?" Jake held her gaze, the weight of everything that had happened settling in. He could have walked away. He could have left her as stone, safe from whatever fate the cave had planned. But he hadn't. He chuckled softly, shaking his head. "I don't leave people behind." Aktyra looked at him for a long moment, then smiled, a soft, grateful smile that carried a meaning deeper than words. Outside the cave, the dark purple sky stretched endlessly above them, 2 moons casting their pale light across the alien landscape. The journey wasn't over. There were still questions, still mysteries to uncover. But for now, they had won, and neither of them would face the future alone.